my name is KayLynn. This is an individual performance, senior division. The name of my project is I Am Not Strong After These Weeks, Women's Hunger Strike Stand for Suffrage. Good morning, class. Our discussion topic for today will be hunger strikes in the 1900s for women's suffrage. This was an important time in history for women. Women did not have the right to vote in most states and could barely participate in politics. Men controlled most of the country. It started to change in the 1800s when Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton became the first two women's rights suffragettes. They began by giving speeches across America. Then in 1863, they created the National Women's Loyal League. They inspired women to join the league, and later on inspired the woman we were talking about before, Alice Paul. Paul was first introduced to women's suffrage in 1910, when she was in London and saw women throwing rocks at windows to gain public awareness for women's suffrage. She joined them, and later was arrested and put into a jail where she participated in her first hunger strike. 3 years later, after Paul was released, she created the National Women's Party. The party's main goal was to gain public awareness for women's suffrage and to gain women's right to vote. We will learn about the party in our next unit. At first, people were in 1917, National Women's Party members marched up to the White House wearing purple, gold, and white sashes and carrying banners such as the one over here. At first, people were encouraged by the bravery of these women, but after the U.S. entered World War I, people began to see the women they're protesting as unpatriotic and disrespectful. After it went on for more than a few months, the president and his administration decided to arrest their leader, Alice Paul, in an attempt to stop the women from continuing. When it did not stop them, he realized that the only way to stop them would be to arrest the women themselves. Since their protest was legal, he decided to arrest them for the reason of blocking traffic in front of the White House. Blocking traffic in front of the White House. Policemen warned the women if they were to picket again, they will be arrested and put on trial. The very next day, 100 women marched up to the White House and attempted to picket once again, and were immediately arrested, while Miss Paul was in prison and started another hunger strike. Hello, what is wrong with you inconsiderate people? Don't you know who I am? Alice Paul, the leader of the National Women's Party. Do you have any idea what I've had to go through? And yet, I have been arrested for taking a stand for a cause that I believe in, by starting a legal and quite practical protest. Hey, where are you going? I wasn't finished with you yet. Ooh. Carrie Chapman Catt and the Women's Association's more reserved way of handling this wasn't moving quickly enough. She thought by taking the more reserved route, it would let people know we didn't want to take over the country. What an absolute ridiculous idea. The state-by-state amendments weren't getting us to our bigger goal. So I decided to take a more militant approach, an approach that citizens would actually recognize. A constitutional amendment is what we must have if we ever want men and women to have equal rights across the nation. The protesting at the White House is what got the citizens' attention. Mr. Wilson finally started to pay attention when we started to burn his glorious speeches publicly. Ah, back again, I see. Will you let me finish my story? You know they will not cease to fight for a right that we must receive, and nor will I cease with my intention of striking in this prison. Mr. Wilson's excuse of war is not a valid excuse to just push us aside. It's not a valid excuse to just push us aside. We are not just dumb housewives looking for something to complain about. We need a constitutional amendment for our voting rights, so everyone can vote. Good day, gentlemen. My name is Sir William Biles, and I am here before you today to urge you that when the time comes, bestow a red rose upon your coat pocket and vote no for the 19th Amendment. Women have had enough influence in the world as it is. They have won the empire by sending forth their sons to do its work, and the women that want the vote now are not governed by their own consent, and it is a violation of the first representative and the government. Women have all the rights that they need, and most states have already given them the right to vote. One must take a stand against their attempts to starve themselves and make this country look as if we don't care about them. and an attempt to gain the vote in the process. We must stop them so that we can remain the great country we are. We must stop them so that we can remain the great country we are. We must stop them so that we can remain the great country we are. And they have the audacity to protest when we have a war on our hands. Men are dying for our country while these inconsiderate women are pressuring our president for voting rights. The strongest reason, in my opinion, why we should not grant the vote to women is that it is the means of taking them away from the home into what must necessarily be a rather dirty game of politics. For everyone knows that a man without a woman to take care of his children as in home is incompetent. The home cannot go on. These women baffle me. Why do they decide to stop themselves for this ridiculous cause when they should be taking care of the household? They won't get the vote now by participating in these strikes set up by Miss Paul. I am so excited. The 19th Amendment has just been passed, and women are now able to vote in elections. Those women who stayed outside the White House through the mockery and doubt helped immensely with this. Otherwise, it was all because of that woman, Miss Paul, and the stand she took against the government. Through the hunger strike she started in the jail that spread all the way to the Kuehn workhouse, she got so many women to join. No one knew what they were doing to those poor women in that prison. I first found out what they were doing with a newspaper on my doorstep. It had articles of the mistreatment they had gone through. It even had letters from some of the women that were being held that guards had tried to smuggle to their husbands. Miss Paul is a very public figure, after all. It was risky of her and the other women to take a stand like that, with the war going on. They can't possibly be paid to, Mr. Wilson can't possibly pay to keep them in jail any longer because of it. And Miss Paul is a very public figure, and they got loads of attention with all the newspapers. So she must have used that and the strikes to get the citizens' attention, and which directly helped to pass the 19th Amendment. With women now voting, just imagine what we can do in the years and generations to come. We can become more independent, start our own businesses, and become valued members in politics. All because one woman decided to take a stand. Through her suffering, I get to vote in this election between Mr. Harding and Mr. Cox. And because of Miss Paul, we are stronger after these weeks.
You were right on time. Yes, you were right on time. So, tell us how you chose the topic. I mean, obviously we've read your process paper, but it's always fun to hear your perspective.
Yeah. I chose the topic because I had always kind of wondered, because I knew way back that women weren't really allowed to do much, so I kind of didn't know when they actually were able to vote. So I decided to look more into it, and especially when we went to Wilson Library, I got really interested because I found so many old documents of what they had gone through, and I had no idea that women had actually gone through physical suffering to get just for voting. Mm-hmm. Which is what for men was so easily to do, but for women we had to literally starve ourselves to get it. And I just found it really interesting since it's a part of my history and a part of a lot of women's histories.
So as far as your resources, you have I didn't even make it through all the primary ones yet to look at them, so pardon me for that, but tell me what your favorite things were that you
One
found.
of my favorite things was Jail for Freedom. It's the thing I had in the book back there.
Mm-hmm.
It was done by Dora Stevens, which she was in prison with Miss Paul, and she kind of saw what she had to go through, and Dora Stevens was also force-fed, and she watched as Miss Paul was taken to a psychiatric ward because they wanted to make her be insane so they wouldn't actually have to listen to her, and basically they're like, oh, she's insane, so we can't give him the vote because she's just making all this up. Another one of mine, they didn't make it on there, but it was microfiche, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And it had a bunch of Congress hearings from the women that were in trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I also found some interesting facts where Carrie Chapman Catt was given interviews like in the microfiche, I found these. She was given interviews because of her reserved approach, and then Alice Paul, the president, completely ignored her because she was too wild with her militant approach.
I thought it was interesting you had microfiche in here, because you have to go, I mean, it has to be a really specific source to still be on microfiche.
Yeah.
Because there's so much
Yeah, they
digital
There
stuff.
were
digitize
so
everything.
many things to look
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
too.
And kudos for you for learning how to use microfiche.
I know, it's
Quite
kind of-
frankly.
I just follow the machine.
Yeah.
Anything, and you can say no, because we've covered a lot,
Mhm.
just between everything you presented and everything you have here. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about your process or your topic? And you can, like I said, you can say.
Or is there something you didn't include that you wish you could have?
Yes, there's a few things that I didn't include. I wanted to include some stuff about the Equal Rights Amendment, because it kind of was Paul's idea, and then, there was this woman, Phyllis Schlafly, I think it was, and, she was very against it, and I wanted to put that in there to get another perspective besides the politician, but it was just too much, so I couldn't add it, but I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, excellent.
Well, excellent job. Thank you for making it, well,
Yeah,
sharing
congrats on
your
making it
project
straight.
with us.
Actually,
Congrats.
I think I forgot to give.
Oh,
Sarah one of
thank
those.
you.
We'll give you that, and we'll give you back one copy, and we'll just keep the one.
Okay, thank you.
And you're free to take them.
All right, thank you.